The mansion was silent at 2 a.m., but Elvis Presley prowled Graceland's shadowed halls like a restless king in exile. He paused before the oak stand, where his white GI and black belt hung, satin fabric threaded with sweat, and memories of Sensei Ed Parker's firm guidance. His reflection in the dojo's mirror showed hollowed cheeks and haunted eyes, a spotlight warrior running on instinct, not passion. By morning, tabloids buzzed, Elvis's comeback marred by health scare. But no one whispered the real challenge stalking him. On a Los Angeles talk show, Johnny Weiss, karate's undefeated show champion, sneered at the singer with broken legs, daring Presley to prove his honor in a public display of manhood on a Vegas arena mat. Elvis closed his eyes, hand resting on that black belt. He'd traded kicks for crooning long ago, but now a deeper test awaited. Would he rise, or would the silence that followed be his final bow? Let us know where you're watching from, and we hope you enjoy the story. Elvis Presley sat alone beneath the soft glow of Graceland's night lamps, the echoes of yesterday's ovations still humming in his bones. Midnight draped the mansion in hushed shadows, and the only witness to his solitude was an ivory kimono hung on a carved oak stand, its black kenpo belt tied just so, a silent reminder of discipline and purpose he had once embraced so eagerly. He traced the satin folds with a finger, recalling the hours spent under Sensei Ed Parker's watchful eye, the crisp snap of G sleeves as he executed each block and strike. Tonight, sleep eluded him, replaced by a heavy weariness in his chest, not the familiar fatigue from countless encores, but a deeper exhaustion, one born of expectation, isolation, and a gnawing sense of disconnection from the man he once was. His gaze drifted from the kimono to the framed photographs lining the mahogany shelves. Himself in sequined jumpsuits, arms raised to the roar of tens of thousands. Then, older, more worn, mid-tour snapshots of laughter shared with Colonel Parker and Priscilla. Nothing here acknowledged vulnerability. Nothing here acknowledged the silent fracture beneath his public persona. A soft cough disturbed the quiet. Lisa Marie's tiny silhouette appeared in the doorway, eyes ringed with concern. She wore her pink nightgown, its frilly collar still damp from an afternoon bath, and clutched a well-worn plush rabbit to her chest. She hesitated, then stepped forward. "Daddy?" Her voice trembled. "Are you sad?" He forced a smile, gentle but hollow. "Just thinking, baby girl." She climbed onto the edge of his desk chair, swinging her bare feet. "I saw something on TV," she whispered, voice low. "That man, he called you a singer with broken legs. He said, 'You're a disgrace.'" Elvis's jaw tensed. He lifted his hand, brushing a stray curl from her forehead. "He's confused," he murmured, but the lie tasted bitter. He reached for the kimono's black belt and fingered the knot, searching for the calm it once gave him. Morning arrived too soon with a parade of headlines. Elvis Presley slams late again. King's comeback in jeopardy. Exhausted icon undergoes isolation. But buried deep in the local papers was a stark invitation. Footage from a Los Angeles talk show where one Johnny Weiss, fresh off a string of karate tournament victories, had sneered at Elvis's martial arts credentials. "A singer with broken legs?" Weiss had taunted, arms crossed. "He's no fighter. Let him step into a real arena and show us what he's got." Within hours, talk radio hosts were belting out the clip, fans divided between outrage and dismissive amusement. But for Elvis, the barb cut deeper than any critique of his music. It was a public challenge to his integrity, his very right to claim the discipline he'd practiced for years. He had traded blows for bridges, But here was a man daring him to prove his worth with violence. That afternoon, in a small TV bungalow off Elvis Presley Boulevard, Lisa Marie accompanied her father to retrieve crisp studio suits for an upcoming sound check. They paused by a stacked TV monitor showing Weiss's interview looped in slow motion. His smirk, the curl of scorn at Elvis's name. Lisa Marie tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, why is that man so angry at you?" Her round eyes brimmed with confusion, an ache in her small voice that Elsa recognized as a wound deeper than a child's misunderstanding. He knelt, lifting her to perch on a low crate. He cradled her face in his hands, searching for words. "Sometimes, people, they feel they have something to prove," he said softly, his voice cracked by regret. "They think hurting others will make them stronger." She frowned, clutching her rabbit tighter. "But you're strong already." She studied his features, etched with stress, but still bearing the dignity of a man who had carried the weight of stardom and never bowed. Her faith in him, unconditional and childlike, stung him with both pride and sorrow. He kissed her forehead, a promise in the gesture. "Thank you, sunshine." He rose, brushing dust from his pressed trousers. For the first time since the LA broadcast, he felt anger coiled in his gut, a fierce desire to defend not just his skill, but his honor and the innocence of this little girl who believed in him. That night, back in his private dojo room, replacing the kimono for a moment with his stage costume, Elvis practiced slow kata beneath the soft light. Each movement was measured. Block, strike, pivot. His body, though weary, responded with the muscle memory of thousands of repetitions. But this time, it was not a show routine. It was preparation, born of necessity. He envisioned Weiss's sneer, the glare of the cameras, the jeers of the uninformed. He channeled the frustration into precision, each punch a stave against humiliation, each block a shield for his daughter's faith. In the hush of that familiar space, he resolved, not to vanquish an opponent in fury, but to stand tall in integrity. He would accept Weiss's challenge, not for ego's sake, but to reclaim the dignity maligned on national television, and he would do so as himself. No sequins, no spectacle. Only a man who believed in the quiet power of discipline, honor, and the unwavering faith of an 8-year-old girl. The dawn light seeped through the lace curtains of Graceland's private dojo, illuminating the matted floor and the row of black belt uniforms hanging neatly on wooden hooks. Elvis Presley stood before the full-length mirror, clad in a plain white jai that felt unfamiliar beneath the soft glow of sunrise. His broad shoulders and powerful chest were already damp with sweat, though no sparring partner had yet stepped onto the mat. Yesterday's television broadcast still echoed in his mind. Johnny Weiss's cruel taunts, the sneer that branded Elvis a singer with broken legs, and the public's fervor for any hint of scandal. He closed his eyes and inhaled the scent of disinfectant and polished wood, and the faint trace of his own cologne. The dojo had once been a sanctuary, where he learned discipline and respect. Now it was his forge for reclaiming dignity. "Sensei Parker," he called, voice low. From the corner, a man in his 60s rose from behind a small desk piled with manuals on Kenpo technique. Ed Parker, tall, stoic, hair flecked with gray, nodded and approached. His deep brown eyes were steady beneath heavy brows. "Mr. Presley," he said quietly, folding a clipboard beneath one arm, "I hoped you'd change your mind." Elvis bowed slightly. "This isn't for show, Sensei. It's for me, and for my daughter." Parker's expression softened. "I've known you since you were a kid. Nylon socks and all. You don't need to prove yourself with your fists." Elvis ran a hand through his hair, frustration sharpening his tone. "I don't want to fight like a prize fighter, but I can't stand by and let him humiliate what I've built, what I've taught my little girl to respect." He gestured toward the empty mat. "I need to know I can still stand tall." Parker exhaled and nodded once. "We'll do this right. Kenpo is rooted in control, not aggression. Remember that. You demonstrate skill, not brute force." They began with basics, stances and footwork, the way weight shifted seamlessly from heel to ball. Each pivot measured. Elvis moved with surprising grace, despite the occasional wince from a twinge in his knee, a relic of touring injuries. Parker called out corrections. "Square your left foot, straighten the spine. Yes, now bring the right fist down in a descending hammer strike. Snap through the wrist." Elvis followed, striking an imagined target again and again. His muscles burned, but he welcomed the sensation. Pain tempered by purpose. Each block, each parry, was an assertion of his dignity. After an hour, Parker paused the drill. He stepped back, folding his arms. "He can talk a big game, but Johnny Weiss is not a Kenpo man. He's a stunt fighter, flashy, but unrefined." Elvis exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow. "I know. I want to show him the difference." Parker handed Elvis a water bottle. "Then let's prepare you not for war, but for a demonstration of respect. I'll refine your technique, add a few disarms and counters, things that will look elegant in front of an audience, but are rooted in self-defense." For the next several days, Elvis returned at dawn and dusk, training in seclusion. Under Parker's watchful eye, he drilled the classic Kenpo forms, Tong-gi, Chum-kyu, in sequences that combined fluid motion with sudden bursts of power. He practiced wrist locks and escapes, learning to neutralize an opponent's attack without delivering crushing blows. Each repetition restored a piece of him he'd lost amid screaming crowds and blinding spotlights. Meanwhile, the media continued to swirl with Weiss's taunts. In a televised interview recorded for a national sports program, Weiss cocked his head, muscles rippling under his black tank top. "I respect martial arts," he declared, "but Presley, he's a singer. No more kicks than a baby giraffe. I'm calling him out. Let's see if he can stand the heat." He flashed a grin that looked more like a challenge than charm. Elvis watched the clip at home in Graceland's family room, Lisa Marie perched on his lap. The two of them stared at the flickering screen, her small hand clutching his belt loop. She tilted her head, lip trembling. "Daddy, why does he want to hurt you?" Elvis squeezed her hand, voice calm but tender. "He's upset. Sometimes people think they need to hurt others to feel stronger." He lifted her into his arms, drawing her close so she could rest her head against his chest. "But real strength," he whispered, "is in kindness and in knowing when to stand up for yourself." She sniffled, wiping her nose on her nightdress. "Will you show him?" He nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "Not to hurt him, but to show him who I really am." The next morning, Elvis presented Lisa Marie with a small velvet box on the front porch. She opened it to find a delicate silver pendant shaped like the emblem of his dojo, a stylized fist over laurel leaves. "It's your symbol," he told her. "A reminder that some fights aren't about fists, honey. They're about standing tall, no matter what." She slipped the pendant over her head, eyes shining. "I'll be brave, Daddy." That afternoon, Elvis left for Las Vegas, accompanied only by Parker and a small entourage. The gig in his calendar marked private demonstration. The sense of anticipation crackled in his veins. Not the hungry roar before a concert, but the focused tension before a test of spirit. He settled into the back of his Cadillac, pendant glinting at Lisa Marie's throat, and exhaled, ready to once again put Kenpo to the ultimate demonstration of honor and restraint. In that moment, the lines between actor and athlete, between showman and warrior, blurred. Elvis Presley prepared to step into the ring, not to conquer with might, but to reclaim his dignity, guided by the silent faith of a little girl who believed in him. The night air in Las Vegas trembled with anticipation as the arena lights wound themselves tighter around the ring set at center stage. Rows of folding chairs stretched out in concentric arcs, third-row seats reserved for eager society patrons, bleachers further back for sports writers and curious tourists. The banner above the ring read, "Demonstration of Martial Mastery, Elvis Presley versus Johnny Weiss," flanked by flickering spotlights. Every muted gasp and shuffling footstep amplified the tension in the cavernous hall. Backstage, Elvis Presley stood beneath a simple white spotlight, dressed not in rhinestones, but in the white gi he'd worn during dawn drills with Sensei Parker. The black belt wrapped once around his waist gleamed in the glare. He closed his eyes, recalling the quiet of Graceland's dojo and Lisa Marie's faith in him. He inhaled, steadying himself for the task ahead, a demonstration of Kenpo confidence, not violence. Across the ring, Johnny Weiss paced beneath the neon glare, fists wrapped in black tape, muscles rippling beneath a sleeveless satin robe. He flexed, chin jutting, a sneer curled on his lips. In his mind, this was a chance to humiliate a superstar, to reduce Presley's martial legacy to fodder for tabloid fodder. The bell rang once, sharp. Tempered applause rippled through the crowd, but all eyes were fixed on the pair. Elvis bowed politely, then assumed his fighting stance, feet shoulder-width, weight centered. Weiss grunted a dismissive laugh, then lunged. Their first clash was almost predictable. Weiss threw a wild overhand right, an unrefined, power-driven punch meant to exploit Presley's reputation for showmanship over strength. Elvis blocked with a crisp inward parry, the wood-grain mat beneath their feet creaking with the force. Weiss followed with a low kick, glancing Presley's shin. The crowd murmured, "This was real after all." Elvis shifted weight, pivoting into a flowing counterstrike, his left palm pushing upward beneath Weiss's jaw, snapping him back. The gesture was textbook Parker technique, swift yet controlled. Weiss staggered, eyes widening in surprise. The audience leaned forward. Presley's chest rose and fell, measured. His artistry lay not in damage inflicted, but in precision displayed. Suddenly, Weiss snarled and, breaching the rules of their agreement, dropped low, driving a knee into Presley's midriff. The gasping thud echoed as Elvis doubled over, breath sucked from his lungs. The crowd's polite applause turned to scattered gasps of shock. Elvis's eyes flicked upward, surprise there, but no fear. He pressed a palm against the canvas to brace himself, pain radiating in cold shock. Weiss advanced, fist cocked for the finishing blow. But as he drew his arm back, Elvis found resolve. He rose on one leg, twisting his body with a powerful hip turn, his right arm sweeping down in a hooking block that deflected Weiss's strike. The momentum carried them both toward the ropes. In one fluid motion, Elvis wrapped an arm around Weiss's upper body, then executed a classic Kenpo hip throw, flicking his hip forward, guiding Weiss over and onto the mat with controlled force. The impact reverberated across the ring. Weiss lay momentarily stunned, limbs splayed beneath the harsh overhead lights. A hush fell, shock mingled with awe. The referee knelt beside Weiss, checking for concussion. Presley, breathing heavily, stepped back into his stance, gaze unwavering. The champion rose, face contorted by anger more than pain. He lunged at Elvis's midsection again, but this time met a steadfast shield. Presley's forearm block, solid as oak. He followed with a swift palm strike to Weiss's shoulder, spinning him off balance. The crowd exhaled collectively, sensing the tide had turned. Weiss yelped as Elvis applied a wrist lock, twisting and pressing, forcing Weiss to his knees in clear submission. But rather than wrenching further, Presley released the hold. He raised both hands in a gesture of calm, voice carrying cleanly through the hush. "I didn't come to hurt you, son, but I won't let you hurt me either." His words resonated deeper than any blow could. The referee raised Presley's hand in victory, not as a knockout, but as the champion of restraint. The arena shook with applause, a thunderous affirmation of the moral triumph unfolding before them. Weiss, breathing hard, looked up at Presley. His chest heaved with shame and grudging respect. Presley extended a hand, helping the champion to his feet. Weiss accepted it, jaw tight, before the two warriors, one a global icon, the other a brash competitor, bowed to each other in a final salute. The crowd, once primed for spectacle, rose to its feet in a standing ovation that thundered against the rafters. Elvis bowed humbly, wiping sweat from his brow, and allowed the moment to wash over him. The vindication of honor, the vindication of discipline. Backstage, he retrieved Lisa Marie's hand, cradling it as they stepped away from the glare. She looked up at her father, awe shining in her eyes. "You were brave," she whispered. He knelt, pressing his forehead to hers. "Bravery isn't about winning fights," he said softly. "It's about standing tall when it matters." And as they disappeared into the hush beyond the curtains, the arena lights dimmed on the spectacle of true courage, one born of respect, restraint, and the quiet roar of a dignified heart. He rested in the smoky cool of his dressing room, the night's frenzy still humming through the velvet curtains. The aroma of talcum powder and cheap cologne mixed with the faint echo of applause that trickled through the walls. His knuckles tingled from the throws and blocks in the ring. But it was his heart that felt the deeper ache, a mixture of triumph and compassion that he'd never known on stage. Johnny Weiss sat across from him in a plastic armchair, sweat-soaked satin robe slung open, chest heaving. The harsh glare of the dressing room lights cut through his bravado, revealing eyes rimmed with regret. Elvis regarded him in silence, each second stretching until even the ticking clock seemed eager for confession. Finally, Weiss broke the hush. His voice was hoarse. You didn't have to do that. You could have crushed me." Elvis shifted, untying the belt of his GI, the knot slipping loose with a soft whisper. He folded it carefully and laid it on the small folding table between them. "That's the difference between you and me," he said quietly. "I don't believe in crushing people to prove I'm strong." Weiss swallowed, gaze dropping to the scuffed floor. "I've spent my whole life proving something. To my old man, to the crowd, to myself. I thought if I beat you, then I'd be the real deal." His words trembled in the stale air. "But when I hit you in that first exchange, and you just stayed there, I saw something different." Elvis listened without interruption, heart softening. He'd entered that ring to defend more than his skill. He'd sought to protect his daughter's faith in him and to demonstrate the dignity of false humility. Here was the man who'd forced that lesson into flesh and blood reality, wrestling with his own demons in the confession that followed. Weiss continued, voice catching. "I never cared about anyone but myself. I didn't know real strength came from holding back." He rubbed a hand over his shaved head, as though trying to erase the years of aggression from his memory. "I'm sorry. To everyone." Elvis leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Then make it right," he said softly. "Stand for something bigger than yourself." Weiss nodded, tears glimmering at the corners of his eyes. "I will," he promised. The next morning, the headlines told a different story. Elvis Presley's quiet victory. Singer's dignity outshines tough talk. Weiss forced to reflect after Vegas showdown. Inside Graceland's sunlit courtyard, Lisa Marie chased dappling shadows across the grass, laughter ringing like a bell. She carried a folded piece of paper, the special drawing she'd made for her father, capturing his gentle strength. Elvis found her by the old magnolia tree, where sunlight speared through fog to paint the lawn in gold. He knelt and held out her drawing, a simple sketch of two figures, one tall, one small, standing beneath a banner reading, "Peace, not war." At the bottom, in her careful hand, "Real heroes know when not to fight." He smiled, brushing a loose curl from her forehead. "You're right, baby." He studied the banner she'd drawn, imagining how he might share that lesson with a wider world. That afternoon, in a nondescript office above a barber shop, Johnny Weiss sat across from a Veterans Charity Coordinator, signing paperwork. The Fist of Courage Fund, an initiative he'd launched in the wake of his humility, pledged to support injured service members in need of adaptive sports equipment. The coordinator shook Weiss's hand, eyes bright. "This will change lives." Weiss nodded, thoughtful. "Just let it speak louder than I ever did." Weeks later, Elvis hosted a private benefit at the Las Vegas Community Center. It wasn't televised, no photographers blocked the entrance, and guests entered through a side door. Inside, rows of folding chairs faced a small stage with a single microphone. On the back wall, a simple banner read, "Strength in Restraint, for our veterans." Elvis emerged in a dark suit without sequins, his slicked-back hair gleaming softly. He offered a nod to the audience, veterans in wheelchairs, families of the fallen, community leaders, and allowed them to settle before speaking. "Tonight," he began, voice steady, "we honor those who have fought for our country, and those who have fought for each other." He paused, eyes scanning the room, finding Johnny Weiss in the front row, clasping the hand of a veteran. "I learned something important in Vegas. Real courage isn't about unleashing your fury. It's about knowing when to hold it back, and when to fight for what matters." He motioned behind him. "And tonight, Johnny Weiss and I invite you to stand with us, to support those who've given more than we can measure." A volunteer approached as Weiss joined Elvis on stage. Together they unveiled a large check for the Fist of Courage Fund, the amount symbolic of the caring spirit between them. Weiss raised Elvis's hand, and the room erupted in applause. Not the roaring cheers of an arena, but the heartfelt clapping of many hands, a chorus of gratitude. After the ceremony, veterans approached them with hugs and stories. The man who'd learned to snowboard on a sit-ski thanks to the fund. The woman who'd regained independence with a custom prosthetic. Each testament shone brighter than any spotlight. Elvis watched from the sidelines, heart full. Lisa Marie, clutching her father's jacket hem, beamed up at him. He scooped her into his arms for a quiet spin, whispering, "We did good, baby." That night, back in his Graceland bedroom, a room adorned with gold records and velvet drapes, Elvis placed Lisa Marie's drawing on the bedside table beside the Kenpo G's black belt. He knelt, pressing a gentle kiss to the ikat of her creation. In the hush, he realized that this, quiet compassion, meaningful action, and the willingness to forgive, was the real legacy he wanted to leave. Not the blinding flash of starlight, but the soft glow of a single match struck in the darkness, guiding souls toward hope. He rose, turning out the lamp. The drawing lay beneath the moon's gentle gaze, A reminder that the greatest strength comes not from unleashing power, but from choosing compassion over conquest, even when the whole world expects you to fight. And in that silent moment, Elvis Presley, king no more but human at last, found his truest victory. Redemption through grace.